reason I can speak so clearly on this is that I was there. And I joke, this is not a joke actually, but I know what the barrel of a gun tastes like. And it's one of those things where I got to that point and I never once asked for help. And the reason that I'm here today is because I didn't pull the trigger and then I asked for help.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Blah, Blah, Blah Something Wellness podcast. We are in our month of failure, epic fails, failing forward, all the fails. But really what failure is a step towards success. And we have some really awesome guests here that are all leaders and have failed many times, and I'm not going to share too much. I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves and we'll get into what it takes to actually be successful. So I'm going to kick it off with, well, I'm your host, Tami Sharp, and then I'm going to have Mike Lawson. We got a whole bunch of mics on here today, so I'm going to start with Lawson. Introduce yourself and then we'll go around.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mike Lawson. I did 24 years with the San Diego Sheriff's Department. Retired for a couple of years. I've been retired 2 years now, but I am currently a civilian wellness coordinator for Chula Vista Police Department. It's about 300 sworn agency just south of San Diego. And I'm a one-man wellness unit, but just trying to proactively get our employees resources, help them out, be a listening ear. I'm also a master coach and director of public relations for law enforcement coaching.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'm actually going to kind of guide how I want this. Sal, I'm going to have you introduce yourself last. So Mike Badgley, will you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Mike Badgley. I currently work for the Department of Children, Youth, and Families here in Washington State as a resilient support coordinator, which basically is a fancy way of saying I do a lot of peer support and mental health crisis response. I did 5 years with Idaho County Sheriff's Office, and before that, I did 5 years in the Marine Corps, in the infantry, and then I went dark side, which means I went to the officer program afterwards. And in between all of that, I actually ran a business for about 10 years and failed and succeeded at that multiple times. So I've got a lot of different things that I can bring up. So it's a pleasure to meet you all and look forward to talking today.
Awesome. Thank you. Ken, will you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. My name is Ken Koch. 35 years in law enforcement, recently retired about 9 months ago. Really enjoying retirement, but staying connected with the profession through law enforcement coaching. 23 years with the Flagstaff Police Department in Northern Arizona, was the chief of police in Taos, New Mexico for a little while, and then finished up my sworn career as the assistant chief and chief with the University of Colorado in Boulder. Transitioned over then to the civilian side and managed a regional training center here in Northern Colorado for the first 4 years of its operations. And like I said, after that, I'm due for retirement.
You have failed at retiring like what, 3 times now?
Yes, I have. About twice.
Oh,
so far, the third one is going
this
well.
one's sticking. All right, awesome. Thank you. And Luvera, please.
Thank you, Tami, for having me. It's a pleasure to see all you and meet you all. Similar to Ken, I'm a recovering chief of police, recently retired as well within the last year. I was retired for all of 3 days before I took another job as a threat assessment coordinator working with our school systems, doing threat assessment. So I've got recent failures and failures all the way back into childhood that I get to lean on today. So this is the appropriate place for me to be and have this discussion with all of you.
Awesome. Thank you. And Sal brings a little bit of a different flavor because he does not come from the law enforcement background, but he is a master. He's not only a master, he's a grand master. So Sal, will you please introduce yourself?
Well, hi, my name is Sal. Last name is Banuelos. I've been in martial arts since 1976, and I opened our school in 1989. And we're still active. We're still teaching, and we enjoy. I actually enjoy working with the police officers. I worked with Chris Zamora, Ed Morales a couple of times, and we go in there and play with the cops and beat each other up and have fun with that. And this is a good topic because like I said, I opened my shop in 1989. I've been through a lot of ups and downs. So I'm glad to be here too. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, and I love what you bring as we, have the conversation because you do work with officers. So when you teach martial arts, when you're teaching it to civilians, you know how to teach it for civilians. But what Chris and I both really appreciate is you understand that what works on the mat is not what's going to work in the street. It's not what's going to work when you're in full gear. And I'll edit in a picture. I'll remind myself to edit in a picture because I have a picture of you. I think you have Chris in a choke while he's in full garb. Uh, so it's going to be a great conversation. So as we get into this, for the listeners, the intention is we have a whole bunch of, industry experts, leaders, professionals that have made it kind of to the top of their game. So what I'd like to kind of do is just start with a bottom line, like what were some of the early failures that kind of shaped you as a person and helped guide you on the path towards success? No pressure. Who wants to go first?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so for me, it was before I even started the career. I forget the exact number. I think it was 12 or 13 agencies that I applied for. And mind you, this was in Southern California in the early 90s to mid 90s. And it was really competitive to try to get into law enforcement. And I failed many times of not getting hired by police agencies. And I was young at the time, and looking back, I see some of the reasons. I mean, I was young, I was immature, but looking back, like I kind of had to go through those failures to kind of keep going. And I almost gave up. I'll be totally honest. It took a buddy. I finally had to put myself through the police academy myself. So I wasn't sponsored by an agency. I put myself all the way through the academy. And it took a friend to kind of drag me to where I eventually got hired. He's like, hey, they're testing. And I kind of didn't want to go. I was almost maybe thinking this wasn't going to be my career. And he kind of took me to this agency, and they saw that I already had my post certificate. I completed the academy, and they hired me right up. So I think that friend, his name's Matt, that brought me to that testing. And again, it was frustrating. I think it was 12 or 13 agencies that kind of turned me down, but there was finally one agency that took me on. And again, it took that person to kind of just talk with, and just kind of, he literally drugged me to the testing, and eventually I got hired.
Well, and I love that about your story because you wanted it, you kept going. I know we've had clients that have reached out organically because they're having a hard time in the hiring process and they're getting frustrated. And you've been a great coach because not only did you finally get through, you got hired, you have gone through a 20 plus year career, you've retired, you made it out the other side, and now you're teaching and mentoring others. So was it a failure, or was it something that set you up for ultimate success down the road?
Yeah.
Love that.
Well, I started my business when I was real young, and I was very proud and I had a lot of pride. So I tried to do it by myself, and I had a hard time. And I had 3 dojos. I had to close one down, open another one, and close one down and open another one. But, and then I just kind of reached out, found a mentor. And so basically I was too proud to get a mentor. So getting a mentor was the best thing ever. So I found a mentor, a leader, a guide. And after that, we went up. So don't be too afraid to reach out, get some help, get somebody who's doing what you like to do, and follow their steps.
Awesome. Same for me with the business. We had a pump start of a business that failed epically, and then we pivoted. But even with the podcast, the whole relaunch with the blah, 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 something wellness podcast, we started this, a year ago. Sal, you were on one of the episodes, and I didn't know how to do a podcast. I failed. I don't know if I failed. I just realized that I needed to take it serious and do better. So same thing. I hired experts that know how to do podcasting. I took a 6-month hiatus. I did a 4-month training. I learned how to do it and came back, and I'm still learning. I'm still failing forward though. I'm going to keep putting it out. None of these are going to be perfect. A year from now, I'm going to look back and be like, oh, that was cute, but I'll have evolved. Badgley, what you got?
Yeah, so I would actually kind of go that my failure started well before I got into law enforcement. If anybody who's actually met me in person, they know I'm kind of a Sasquatch, but very, very large person. But I was physically gifted at an early age, which meant that I actually still hold a lot of records for track and for basketball because I just developed so much faster. And I realized that actually set me up for failure in a way because I didn't have to work hard for a lot of things. I just physically was gifted. And it wasn't until I got older and everybody else developed too that all of a sudden I wasn't getting first place anymore and I started failing. And it was a really hard hit. And I realized what happened at that time was that I started to identify that I said I was a failure rather than I have failed at this. And so it was making that a part of my identity, which was the largest mistake. And it's one of those things that through those lessons, I've realized that the value of hard work, the value of I call it push, it's persist until something happens. It's just those failures, those mistakes, they're all part of the process. They're not part of your identity. And so that was kind of one of the key things that really kind of helped me, and it helped me get into law enforcement too, because unfortunately, my military career that ended up falling short because I stepped on a rock wrong and then ran 2 more miles on a flopping ankle, caused permanent damage. So that was not necessarily the way I wanted to go. But then being able to translate this over to law enforcement and kind of same thing as Mike Lawson, it took me 2 years to get hired. And it was one of those things where I just kept going. It was like, if that's not the department, then I got to go find the other one. And I just kept going until I finally got hired. And it was just a wonderful thing. And I actually truly say that being a law enforcement officer saved my life. It gave me that purpose, that identity, and really helped reframe what I was doing because I was still learning how to not make those failures part of my identity. And becoming a cop was absolutely one of those fundamental things that moved me forward. So for me, I do that. It's that simple acronym. I like to keep it simple, stupid, the whole Marine Corps method. But that push, persist until something happens. Just keep going.
Oh, I love that. And even taking it out of law enforcement, you hear that with so many celebrities that are massive celebrities. They had almost given up. They had gone to every audition in Hollywood. They couldn't get even a commercial. And then, their mom was like, go to one more. And then that was like their big break. But it took them years. There's no such thing as an overnight success. I mean, even, people go viral online now. Believe me, as somebody that's in this whole social media trying to, get your voice out there, it's a full-time job. They did not just accidentally go viral. Well, unless you got caught on a cam at a well, not. But besides that, it takes a lot of work to go, get out there. So, Luvera, what do you got?
I think the thing for me that I'm listening to everybody here, I don't think any one of us were mature enough that at the time this happened to us 20 or 30 years ago, we were like, oh, this is a fail forward. It'll all be fine. At least for me, that wasn't the case. It was embarrassing. It was devastating. It was awful. All of those emotions came into it. It's not until years later you realize there was a reason for it and a purpose for it, and it was a redirection. That's all it was. So now, having a few more years on, I can simply say that everything that happens to me, it's a redirection for some reason that I'll figure out later. I just don't see it right now. But I would love to say that
Amen.
at 20 years old, I would love to say, oh, I saw that. I didn't see it. I didn't see it then. It wasn't until much later.
I love that. Thank you. Ken, what about you?
Yeah, so I'm going to come at this kind of from the benefit of hindsight, right? Looking back over the mistakes that I've made and that I've seen others make. And they're really rooted in two issues. First is a mistake of the heart. The other is a mistake of the head. And what I mean by mistake of the heart is you intended to do the right thing. You intended to succeed. You intended to win, whatever it might have been, but you simply didn't have the time and the experience and the knowledge to be as successful as you thought you might have been. Right. And then you look at that as a failure. The mistake of the heart comes down, or the head comes down, when you do have that knowledge and experience, but you make a conscious decision to do something that sabotages your effort. Two very different kinds of failure, right? Now, I'll give you my example from just this last weekend. Part of my retirement strategy to succeed this time is to find new hobbies, things I've never done before. And I just this last Saturday took a stained glass class. And I figured, I've learned how to weld. I'm doing blacksmithing. This is soldering with kind of similar skills. I ought to knock this out of the park. Well, I didn't take my glasses with me, and I didn't realize that this is very intricate work that you need to really see clearly to be successful. So all said and done, my piece was a wreck when it was done because nothing matched up. And I felt like I'd failed, right? And when I got home, I was getting ready to throw the thing away. And then I realized, you know what? That's the first time you've ever done that. You've never tried it before. Keep that as motivation to improve. And I plan to go back and start doing some more projects on my own, right? So mistake of the head versus mistake of the heart. And it's all based in level of experience and the decisions you make and owning the responsibility for those decisions when it's all said and done.
I really love that. I'm gonna shift. It's you guys are gonna see. I'm gonna pull the curtain behind the scenes, but I have this whole wall of certificates, right? And you can see my ring light and my light splashing back at you. But I have all of these, and right here in the middle is my new PhD. Haha, yay! But there's also one up there that I'm not gonna call out, but those that know. But I decided to keep that certificate on the wall because even though I have a PhD and I have all these pieces of paper that I learned a whole bunch, that one piece of paper I learned the most from. That is more valuable to me than the PhD. The PhD, I wrote a paper and I did some work and proved that I know what I'm talking about in some regard. But that other one would not have made anything, like everything else is from that. So keeping those mistakes to remind you where you're coming from. I mean, I put the PhD right next to that certificate as I look at that for my ego. But for me, it's those little things you have to learn along the way. So is it a failure or is it just a stepping stone? All right. So as we get into this a little bit more, if there's somebody listening and they are at the start of their career or not even the start, they're maybe in that 4 to 7 year, the 7-year itch kind of like, hey, I don't know. I thought this was one thing. It's turning out to kind of be another. I don't know if I'm cut out for this. I'm not good at writing reports. I've failed at this. I screwed up in the academy. I did all of that. What kind of guidance would you have for the younger generation when they're inevitably failing a little bit?
I'll go. Yeah. So for me, in my current department, that happens all the time. A lot of the officers are in that 4 to 9 year range, and they're just trying to like figure things out, right? They're not new anymore. They know their job, and they're just trying to navigate through their career. To be honest, a lot of times it's just having that person that you could just vent to and talk to and realize like it's pretty normal what you're going through. I think we've all been through that where when we're in it, we're in the kind of mud of our career or something, we've failed. We kind of look around, now what do I do? And it really is, it seems like a simple process, just talking to someone. But, same with the coaches that are here, a lot of times we could relate to that and we could tell you about our experiences and how we got through that. I think the tough part, looking back at my career and, some of the officers I talk with currently, when you're in it, it's hard to kind of see that outside of that, if it's going to get better. But again, just talking with someone can help tremendously. If you're a department, hopefully you have a chaplain, peer support. Obviously we do coaching here, but that safe resource that you could reach out to someone and just kind of vent, to be honest.
I kind of actually going to refer back to what Luvera and Ken have said, kind of combining both of those, is that understanding these mistakes is we have like these expectations that things are going to go a certain way. And was Ken mentioned, starting something new and then realizing like, oh, this didn't go as expected. That right there is kind of the point, is what's our expectations? Because if our expectations are unrealistic or unfair, we're setting ourselves up for failure. And it's those types of failures are not the ones that are going to help us, because again, we might tie this into our identity. And I'm really into reading. I love Marcus Aurelius and the Stoic philosophy. So I always bring up the amor fati. If anybody understands or know what that is, it's the love of, or acceptance of fate. And it's really kind of accepting what your situation is and removing those expectations and going, hey, this is the situation that I've found myself in. Maybe I made a mistake. I did something wrong here, or I wrecked a police vehicle. I've done that. Have that embarrassment where you feel like, oh my gosh, now everybody's going to make fun of me and this is awful. It looks poor. Well, you know what? We're all cops. They're all probably going to make fun of you. And that's part of the job. And we're all going to laugh about it. And this is stories that you can have down the road. But just realizing that, just accepting this and then just making it part of you, just like, hey, this mistake is going to teach me not how to do this again in the future, that I can correct this, and focusing on what you can control. And I really feel like those types of mistakes are kind of the ones that really can help define us if we look at this as, again, going back to saying the identity piece. And what are our expectations? Are we expecting perfection? It's not going to happen. We're going to make mistakes. How are we going to use those mistakes to move forward and learn from it? So thanks Ken and Mike for talking about those, because I kind of just made my brain think like, oh man, yeah, I've done that. So thank you for those.
How many people
Yeah,
have a control car?
Coming at this from a leader's perspective, I've found over the course of my career, it's so important to set those expectations for your people. And if your leaders will not do that for you, then you have to learn how to do it for yourself, to Mike's point. I refer to it a lot of times as a style of thinking where it's all or nothing thought process, right? You've got to get away from that. That will set you up for failure. And what I mean by that, let me give you an example from my life. I used to race bicycles competitively, both mountain bikes and road bikes. And every race I ever entered, I didn't enter it to win, because there are so many better bike racers out there than me. I entered it to compete. So there's a different level of expectation to define success when you get out of that all or nothing thought process. So to a young rookie just getting started, I would tell him up front, look, I expect you to make mistakes. In fact, if I see you heading towards one that's not going to be a disaster, I'm going to let you make those mistakes, because that's how I want you to learn. And I've just found that to have the greatest success with employee retention and sense of belonging and being valued and all that kind of stuff. So you got to figure out how you're going to look at mistakes. Are they a valuable lesson that makes you better, or are they the end of the world?
Well, I've been in the arts for a while, and people are getting so close to their black belts, and they're about to, they're like 2 months away, and then they break down and they don't test because of fear. They're not clear of if they're wealthy. Worthy. They could, live up to the black belt level. It's all this fear that comes that they just put on themselves. So I think the person has to be clear, and like Mr. Mike Lawson said, get a mentor, like earlier, vent with somebody. So we take these guys to the side, we talk to them, and we give them a new picture, because their picture is too scary. So we write down our goals. So writing your personal goals and having a vision and having a clear view of your goal does help my students, at least.
Getting out of your own head too, I think, is a big one. And setting yourself up for success with the black belt, like with my martial arts journey, at this point in my path, I don't believe that I could actually achieve a black belt. I can barely stretch at this point. I'm in active failure at NAC, just so you guys know, but I'm learning and growing. And so I was like, what do I believe that I could achieve eventually? I'm like, I'd like, if I hit a purple belt, that would be pretty good. That would be success for me. And then once I hit that, we can talk about if I want to keep going or what that looks like. But the mind is our biggest, and Sal is really great about teaching. The mind can be our biggest ally or enemy. Luvera, did you have something?
As everybody spoke, I thought, as they answered, it was departments that seemed to be engaging in failures and that sort of thing. What if they're not in that kind of department, or if they're not on that type of squad, is what I'm thinking. And I guess my advice there is find that old crusty person in the squad room, that person that everybody thinks has been way past their prime for years. Be vulnerable with them and have some conversations, because I guarantee there's some knowledge there. They've lived through some things and they've overcome some things. And if you're able to build a bridge with that person, that's a person that probably is going to speak bluntly with you, be a great mentor, and give you advice, whether you want to hear it or not. But that would be a suggestion for me, is we all have them in our squad room. Go find that one.
You definitely all have them. And, going out and doing training and conferences, I laugh at this point, because we can get excellent and good reviews on everything that we do without fail. There is always one person that was like, nope, you didn't impress me. And I look for it now. I'm like, who's the salty? Where are they? And I make it a game, right? Otherwise my ego, I'd be like, ah. But I also use the one person that is the saltiest, that is really hard to impress. I use the feedback. I use that as fuel to be like, look, like, let's not disregard what they're saying. Now, sometimes I can tell when we get feedback, I'm like, dang it, because we just had a piece of feedback. We did a conference. All of it was rave reviews, except for one person was just like, I didn't get anything out of that. And then for me, I'm like, ooh, this person needs what we have the most. If you didn't take anything away from what we said, that's a you problem. When everybody, if it was everybody saying we didn't get anything, but when it's one, I'm like, dang, I wish I would have known who that person was so I could lean in more. But otherwise, usually it's somebody, leaning into the salty people, talking to them. And if they're really salty, they're really just bitter, guess what? You can still learn from them. Learn what you don't want to be like. There's always a lesson in all of that. Okay.
I think there's an old saying that, tell me who you hang out with and I'll tell you who you are. And sometimes it's their circle, friends, the negative friends that just drag them down. So I tell them, you got to get a new circle, man. You got to find somebody, a better circle. And, and they'll also say, if you're the smartest one in the circle, then it's time for a new circle. So I think the environment that we accept is the problem sometimes. So these guys got to look out for better people. It's very picky on who they select in their circle. So I think that would help too.
So I have a question on that, because last month's topic was navigating toxic work environments. So we talked a lot about what that looks like. Especially for the Chiefs, but all of you guys, because I have a few people that I've been actively talking with across the country that are in toxic situations with poor leadership, or not even leadership, but unhappy people within the department that decided instead of taking accountability and self-awareness, they'd rather take everybody down with them. And they like to target other people, file, complaints and get IAs going and target somebody that didn't actually do anything wrong. But now that person who has integrity, that is doing their job, is now being pushed out. And that group of toxic people are starting to band together a little bit more because it's he said, she said, whatever. So because that's just, you guys know that happens, but that is a failure. That's a department-wide failure. You're going to lose a good person. You're going to keep a toxic person. It's going to snowball. Eventually, the truth will always come out. And I've heard it also, a lot of times the department knows that that person is a failure. They know that there's been issues with that person. And yet for some reason, the good person gets whatever. So speak on that.
I'll go. It's focus on what can you control in those circumstances. And because a lot of times, if we're trying to focus on outcomes and what may happen to this other toxic person, it's like, but what can you do? Because ultimately we can't control other people. We can't control outcomes. How many times have you done everything perfectly and you still fail? It's one of those things that's kind of the way life is. And there's a lot of times people do everything wrong and they succeed. We can't control those things, but what we can control is our activity and our attitude and how we respond to circumstances, or setting those clear boundaries. And I think that's one of the best things that you can possibly do. It doesn't help remove you from those toxic circumstances, but it gives you a little bit of power of what can I do in these moments? How can I continue to be a better officer? Can I continue to improve on my skill set? And eventually that will show out. And I've been in similar circumstances, and it's one of those really, really hard things. If you're focusing on the things that you can't control, you will feel powerless and out of control in all things. So again, focus on what you can do in those moments.
I like that you said somebody can do everything wrong and still succeed. And I think that, because here's the thing, it's perceived success from the outside looking in. So I'll take it out of law enforcement, talk business. Somebody could have no ethics, no integrity. They could just be good at sales, and they could do everything wrong morally and ethically, and yet still have millions of dollars and all the business. And from the outside looking in, it could look like, oh, well, that person's succeeding. But that's not necessarily the case. They might succeed in one respect, but they might be super unhappy in their life. They're not sleeping. Who knows what that looks like. It kind of goes into karma too. A lot of people talk about, I believe in karma. Well, a lot of people like to say that they well, I believe in karma, but they're not getting their karma. We don't get to decide what karma means. We don't get to decide what that looks like for somebody else because we don't have all of the facts. So again, it comes back to what can we control? How can we perceive things and let things go that are, out of our control sometime.
I was going to add that to me, it's a mindset shift. I was given a nugget of wisdom early in my career that I was struggling with my sergeant, and I was told by somebody, you don't work for the sergeant, you don't work for the lieutenant, the commander, the captain, or the assistant chief or the chief. You work for the citizens we're out there protecting. And so as a chief, 30 years later, I took that and I shared that with everybody in the department. They didn't even work for me as a chief. We don't work for the mayor. We work for the people we serve. And when you have that shift, you can leave that squad room of negativity and go out and say, I need to be my very best today because I got people to serve.
I'm going to go a little off topic here because the theme that I'm hearing from everybody and that I want to point out, how are we defining failure? How are we defining it in this conversation? Because every story that we told at the beginning of this podcast ended in success. Every one of you tested for a job, you didn't get it. Well, at the time you were defining that as failure, but your choice to respond to that outcome ended in success, right? So that's why I'll go back to what I said earlier. When I would tell folks, look, I'm going to let you make mistakes. I didn't say I'm going to let you fail. In fact, the next thing I say to them is, I'm going to let you make mistakes, but I will not let you fail, because that's how we learn and get better, right? So when we're talking about failure on a level for individuals in an environment outside their control, I think the gentleman, my esteemed colleagues on the podcast, hit it right on the head. You have to worry about what you can control. And when you start comparing yourselves to others related to your success, their failure, your failure, you're heading down a very dangerous road. You got to focus on yourself.
Well, one of the things that we talked about in the previous episode, one of the members had shared, coming to work drunk. That could be a failure. And in a lot of times, a department would be like, ooh, you're fired. You're done. You're in trouble. But as we're moving with this wellness movement and looking at, let's really take care of the people. And we had talked a little bit about failure and self-sabotage too. Like if you have an officer that is coming to work drunk, or they are exhibiting some sort of behavior that's going to get them in trouble, it is self-sabotaging, and better that, like, hey, that doesn't seem right for this person. As leaders, leaning in and saying, hey, let's get you some help. What is going on? And not just cast them to the side saying, hey, you failed, you're out, you screwed up, bye. But leaning in and saying, hey, what do you need to be doing? How can you be doing this a little bit better? Let's get you the help. We talked a lot in the previous episode about addiction. I just want to mention again, if you're tuning into this episode, you can listen to that one. There are resources. Don't be too prideful or stubborn to actually go reach out to resources. There are a lot of resources. I'm gonna kind of shift the conversation as well. Mike Badgley, I'd like you to share a little bit more of what you do when it comes to the suicide piece, because that could be, that's a failure in some regard. Not you, but you know what I mean. Make that make sense.
Yeah.
Fail on my sentence.
Suicide is unfortunately really common, especially in these lines of work. And the reason why is a lot of times as first responders and individuals who were servant oriented, we're trying to go out and rescue and do these things. What we end up doing a lot of times is we'll have a maladaptive coping mechanism, and we start looking at, hey, this is a solution to my problem. And a lot of times that can be like, I'm going to take myself out of the equation. But that's not actually, that's running from the problem, if that makes sense. It's not facing the fact that we do have power and control over what we can do. But it's common that this can happen, especially in the line of when we talk about suicide, because a lot of times in law enforcement, we have something called acquired lethal capability. We know how to take a life. We know about how life can end. We've seen it. Maybe we're there on responses. We've seen lots of bodies. And having that knowledge is called acquired capability, and that puts us in a risk factor. And so that's very common for veterans. You look at actually veterinarians are some of the highest suicide rate professions right now. They know how to take a life and they have access to the means to do so. And then you start adding in that people do not want to feel like a burden because we have a social requirement. We want to be around others. We want to help lift others up. We don't want to be a burden to them. And so we don't start talking about our problems. We don't admit, hey, we're struggling. And then we socially isolate. And so if we feel alone and we feel like a burden and we have the acquired capability of knowledge how to take our life, that puts us in a really, really bad risk factor. And it's one of those things where a lot of times, again, we feel like we may be going through something and like no one knows what this is like. No one's been through this before. These are actually lies we tell ourselves because the truth is many, many people have been through similar circumstances. They know this pain. They've been through it. You're not alone. But we tell ourselves that because we don't want to be a burden. So it's one of those maladaptive coping mechanisms, that thought process that can lead to suicidal behavior and then also suicidal ideation. We don't want to get there. And so it's a matter of like what Mike Lawson said earlier, talk to people, make those connections. And especially when we're struggling, if we can find ways to connect, even when it's really, really hard, it's one of the best things we can do. And if we're self-isolating and we start using drugs and alcohol to deal with the stress at the jobs, which is extremely common and normal, it leads to very, very poor outcomes. So anyway, just wanted to throw that in there for the suicide part.
Well, and one of the things that can get somebody to that point is compounding failures. Failed at my job, failed at my marriage, failed my kids, failed at being financially stable or secure, failed at providing, failed. And once you get into that, especially for men, because men are supposed to be the protectors and the providers, and when that starts going south and you feel like you've failed in some regard, it can get you into that dark place. And then when you start losing the sense of hope and purpose, that's where you end up in that really, circling the drain, really dark space. And when you're in that, it's incredibly difficult to hear, not even get the resources. If somebody was listening to this right now and they're in that space, even for them to be receptive to hear what we're saying, even though we are saying it, everybody across the board is saying it, you're not alone. You're not alone. You can sit there and shake them and say you're not alone. When you are in your space and you're hyper focused on something, energy goes where energy is sent. So if you have now created, I'm going to back this one up. So it takes 30 days typically to make a habit or break a habit. And if you've spent your whole life focusing on a negative and the failures and you're doing this all the time, you create patterns. When you create patterns, you create habits, which habits become beliefs. And now you have an instilled belief system that you are not good enough, that you're a failure and you're not worthy. And so you, again, like you said, you feel like you become the burden or part of the problem. And with the suicide, a lot of people think, oh, they're just depressed. That's not necessarily the case. And there are several people, Matt Griffin, who wrote his book, Journey to Midnight. A lot of people talk about there's almost a hero complex that comes with the suicide where you get to a point where you feel like, I need to be a protector. I need to protect people from the problem. I am now the problem. So I'm going to protect my loved ones by removing the problem, even though that's a ass backwards way of thinking about it. I'm just going to say that if anybody's thinking that, you and Mike, I know, do you want to share a little bit? I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you want to share a little bit of your story?
Oh, yeah. So I'm very similar. I walked this path. The reason I could speak so clearly on this is that I was there. And I joke, this is not a joke actually, but I know what the barrel of a gun tastes like. And it's one of those things where I got to that point and I never once asked for help. And the reason that I'm here today is because I didn't pull the trigger. And then I asked for help. And it was in that moment, it was actually probably about 5 minutes after I pulled the trigger and didn't pull the trigger and then asked for help, I realized like, well, this was really stupid. Like, why didn't I ask for help sooner? Because I put myself in a really bad spot. And you're absolutely right, as those belief systems where we start thinking like, I am the problem, I am going to be the hero and remove myself, not realizing that impact of suicide would have been far, far worse of me just taking the time and the effort to fix that problem and for me to no longer be that. And it's by changing the habits and systems that I had. And I can speak on this because I've lost more of my brothers and sisters to suicide than I ever have in combat. And that impact on the families and the friends and the loved ones, it is so hurtful. I had my good friend and coworker kill himself last year. It's one of those things where it's still impacting. I see his face every now and then, or something comes up, like it's just, there's that constant reminder. And it's like that impact, we could have avoided it had we been able to get to that belief system or that, hope. And there's that time where people feel like a sense of hopelessness. And hope is one of those interesting things where people think it's a feeling. It's actually a thought process, and it's a habit. And it's the being able to continue forward going, I'm going to make the best of the situation and look towards gratitude. Because a lot of times, again, if you have that negative thought process and you're only focusing on the bad, that's all we're ever going to see. And it's like one of those things where somebody said, those who believe they can and those who believe they can't are right. And it's, again, that focus. I don't know if there's anything further you want me to say on that. I can keep going for on suicide for a while. So,
Well, and I want to say too, like you guys, we've all said, reach out and talk to somebody, reach out and talk to somebody. If whoever that is, once you start talking, some of the issues that seem like big issues will start being like, okay, that's not necessarily so big. That's not so bad. You can reach out to coaches, you can reach out to therapists, whatever that looks like. And I'm going to go one step further too. If for some reason, if you're in a really dark space and you just happen upon this episode of the podcast and you're like, I don't know what to do. One, for anybody, go to your local dojo. I'm going to bring Sal back into this, but getting into martial arts. Yes, you can go to the gym and work out. That's going to help a little bit. You're going to release endorphins and get your blood going. You're going to have all of that. But getting into a dojo with somebody, Sal not only is a great teacher, but he's one of my coaches. I come in, I'm frustrated with business. He's watched me break down and sob, dry heave on the mat. Not because I was, with the, oh, where'd you go? Your picture went away. But not because I was, failing on that, but I was just holding all of that in. And he was able to coach me through it and talk me through, and I was able, and then get the physical part. So I would come out feeling so much better. But if you are somebody that's in a dark, dark space and you're needing help and you don't know where to turn, don't know what to do, reach out to us. I'm going to throw this one out there. If you really need help, I will fly you to Arizona. I will pay for you to go to NAC. I will help you lean into the team. Like, I'm super frustrated where I would like to see 1 week go by where I don't turn on LinkedIn and see that another officer killed himself. It's almost a daily basis, definitely a weekly basis. So I'm on like my own. So with business and everything, it's like, why do you do what you do? Everybody wants to know your why. I have a million whys. It started because I wanted to honor my dad's legacy. I felt like I had a purpose. The why shifts. I have a team that I'm proud of what we're doing, but I have a new why. Like, I'm so tired of seeing good people take themselves out when there's resources, like we're trying to get to you. So that's just my personal little pet peeve tangent on that. Sal, do you want to talk a little bit about what would somebody, what to expect if they were to step onto a mat for the first time?
Well, the first thing is surround themselves with good people, positive people, and people who love life, right? So, but instilling principles like self-respect, self-control, integrity, courage, loyalty, and honesty. Like right now, you come into this dojo, you ask anybody what's the art for, they'll break it down in 3: eye contact, listening, and treating others with respect, treating others the way you want to be treated. So a lot of the values are very important. We instill that in them from day one. Eye to eye contact when they shake hands, speak loud voice, firm handshake. And that's just the inner part. And then the treating everybody like a brother, and you guys all know about the martial arts. It's like a family. So you got Sifu, which is father, Sigon, which is grandfather, and then you got the professor, and then you got the Grand Master. So I've been blessed, me and my brother been blessed to get these titles, and we've seen a lot. And I also have lost a lot of good friends through suicide, but through the martial arts, one finds their path and their way. Through getting beat up and getting thrown a little, getting humbled, because I think humble is a big issue. A lot of us think we're 10 feet tall and bulletproof, and they come in here and they get humbled by little guys. Little guys take them down, and they develop. They're open and they're ready to learn. So I think through the principles and the actual physical part of it, it has a magic thing. I seen it happen over and over again. So I highly recommend, now because I do this for a living, but I seen changes in people. I've seen people come in with 2 left legs and then they're so excited they found that they have a right leg. I've seen, I'm name her name is Jackie Bolin. A lady had her right side was paralyzed. She only had the left hand. She studied with us for over 2 years, developed enough confidence, wrote me a big letter saying thank you, thank you, thank you. She's ready to take on the world now. I think she wanted to fly, become a pilot for small planes, but she found her confidence. She found herself through the art. So I seen it over and over. So like Tami said, we highly recommend it.
Well, and I just personally, and I know we've had conversations on podcast episodes, prior, where I personally believe that law enforcement should have, especially females. This is just my personal thing, and I can get some pushback from it. I really believe that officers should have some form of martial arts training. I see so much body cam footage of somebody in an altercation with somebody. They're so quick to go for their weapon because they don't have any fight technique at all. Where anybody that has even the basic training, I'm like, oh, if you would have just done that, you could have taken control of that situation. So, and you guys, you're chiefs, you're law enforcement, you guys can tell me I'm totally wrong, but that's just my personal opinion. Badgley, what about you? Do you have the military, of law enforcement? Do you have any kind of martial arts training?
Yes, I do. I did a lot of jiu-jitsu. I did Kempo karate back when I was a kid. And I was also a ground defense instructor for SWAT teams. And it was interesting, kind of bringing it back to the failure point, is I thought I knew what I was doing on the mat. And the first time I rolled on the mat with somebody, we were rolling in full gear. I did some jiu-jitsu moves. I stayed on the ground thinking this is the best way and got him in a nice little move. And I thought, hey, I've got him submitted, not realizing he actually had my gun. And it was like, oh, this was a really humbling lesson that this is not the goal. The goal is not to be a wrestler or jiu-jitsu guy and be like, I'm going to get the submission. It's to disengage. It's to get yourself safe. And that was a very, very humbling lesson. And I'm very, very grateful for my time on the mat. Jiu-jitsu taught me so much, especially philosophies for life. Because a lot of times in life, people say, well, I got knocked down on my back. I don't have any options. And jiu-jitsu is like, oh, no, you do. You have so many options. You're on the back. You're fighting. You've got a lot of different fighting positions, things you can do. And that philosophy in life was so, so powerful. So for me, I would 100% agree that knowledge is not only essential, just kind of help for body and the mind, but just give you good philosophies on how to move forward.
That's right.
Well, and also talking with, the body and the mind, Lawson, you paddleboard. I used to surf when I lived on Maui. I would surf a lot, but being out in the water too, just if you're in a space where you're beating yourself up about, whatever you failed at, or, coulda, shoulda, wouldas, or whatever, if you have, I mean, I'm in the desert now, so there's no ocean here. I'm going to the ocean. But if you can, take a vacation, go get into salt water. Fresh water's okay, like to, swim and have fun, but salt water is very energetically cleansing. And to get out, it will, again, the ocean will humble you. I don't know. A lot of the theme is coming into being humble. So I don't know what that's about, but yeah. Lawson, what do you want to talk a little bit about your paddle boarding and how that centers you?
Yeah, so I just before we came on, I got back from paddle boarding, and it just gives me a great reset. I've been doing it for 15 years now, and I think we've talked about in other podcasts how Gil Martin says, I used to go paddleboarding, I used to do this. That's kind of what we need to, like. A lot of us are people that are listening right now. We wait till it gets really bad and then try to deal with it, and we're not doing anything proactively. And a lot of that is working out, martial arts, paddleboarding. I play pickleball. Like, doing those things proactively are going to help you kind of just get through life. I'm just being honest. So yeah, I mean, my message would be not to wait till it gets really bad. Have some sort of, I'm trying to promote wellness check-ins at my department, whatever that looks like, every 6 months, maybe on your year anniversary. And that's not going to fix everything, but just having that check-in, that reset, and talking to someone that maybe knows their job, kind of knows what you're going through, that could help you get through it. We tend not to do that. I look back at my career. I didn't always do that. It wasn't until probably the last 10 years of my career where I surrounded myself with chaplains that I was friends with, mentors, coaches here with law enforcement coaching, like just checking in has been helped me tremendously through personally and my professional career. So yeah, my message would be not to wait, to proactively do that.
Well, I want to spin that a little bit. So don't wait to fail or hope that you don't fail. Like you're trying so hard to be successful and you try to get things right. You're learning something new and you want to be good at it. I would almost have you reframe that. You want to proactively fail. Fail hard, fail fast. Do it again. Do it again. Repetition is key to mastery, right? You're new into the profession. You've never held a gun, let alone figured out how to shoot a gun. What are you going to do? You're going to practice. You're going to fail. You're going to miss. Do it again. Do it again. Do it again. It's muscle memory. And here's the thing with all of this, with mindset, it is training. It's muscle memory. You have to train your brain to be a certain way. You have to train your body to be a certain way. And coming back, I'm going to pull my full circle to the humbling yourself. If you are a master at something, but you take a break, guess what? When you come back, your brain's going to think you're still a master and your body's going to be like, haha, check this out. You can't do it the same way that you used to. So that's where the humbling yourself. And so what do? You have to retrain your brain, retrain your muscles. I don't know if anybody knows this about me in a previous life. When I lived on Maui, I played pool. I was on a billiards team. Every Tuesday of my life, I was in a league that we played pool, and I owned a pool bar. The picture back there, you can't really see, that is my old dive bar. And I played pool all day, every day, and I was really damn good at it for a while. I was never the best female in the league. There were two that were just sharks, and they were so good, but I got myself up to be able to compete against them. And since I've lived in Arizona, I haven't played pool. So I guarantee if you put me, all of you guys, Mike Lawson, didn't you beat me?
I think so.
Dang it. You did. I think Kevin did too. We had a Christmas party and there was a pool table. I was talking smack and they're like, oh yeah, I lost. Muscle memory. So, but my whole point with that rant is to fail proactively. Set yourself up. If you know you're learning something new, go fail at it as many times as you can quickly so that you can get good and you don't get yourself bogged down with the ego and the expectations. So I want to honor everybody's time. And as we always do, I'd like to go around. And if somebody was just tuning in to this last part of the podcast, what little mic drop moment or little piece of wisdom do you have to share with the audience when it comes to failing forward?
I'll go first. For that 30-second mic drop moment, accept the fact that you're going to make mistakes and you may decide to define them as failure. They only stay a failure if you choose not to get back up and continue to press forward and find success. And realize that if you give yourself time and you be patient, you may just have the reason for that failure revealed to you, because that next success you have is even better than anything you imagined you might get.
I want to share, don't compete, don't compare, just do you. All you got to do, you got to be better than yesterday. Find a circle. Circles everybody. I mean, circles the most powerful thing. Find the right people, share your goals and values, and learn from that. And don't be scared to ask questions, and don't be embarrassed to basically pride. Let the pride go and learn.
I was told once that I'm highly contextual, which means I talk a lot. So you can see that I'm trying really hard to work on that. And from that, what I get is if you're talking, you're not listening. And if you're not listening, you're not learning. And so you really need to find a way to insert yourself appropriately when the time comes, but try to just be a sponge and absorb, because even as a chief and everybody thinks, oh, the chief, that's the greatest position ever. I learned so much by just watching and observing, and management by walking around basically. And so don't dismiss any of that stuff as less important than anything else you do.
Yeah, for me, as a wellness coordinator, I've failed a lot where I've tried to push things too quickly, and I've learned to kind of take that step back. But what I've found out is trying to find those early wins and expressing that gratitude. Like, hey, I'm not quite where I want to be, but I was able to implement whatever. Like gratitude, I wasn't really good at it during my career, but we have to if it's just daily gratitude, like today I woke up, I went paddleboarding. That's a great day, right? We tend to look at the negatives, and I was guilty of that. I'll be totally honest. But once I started expressing that gratitude, talking about it, writing it down, it's helped me out tremendously. Again, both professionally and personally.
Basically, speaking on what everybody said here, it's all true. The efforts of gratitude every day, practicing it. I've written it down. Daily gratitude, looking at the positive. Also, I think only failure is when we don't get back up, like what Ken was saying. If you get knocked down, that's part of life. Pain is one of the best teachers there is. As uncomfortable and as crappy as it is, pain is a really good teacher, and be grateful for those moments. Looking back at through the horrible things and traumas I've been through, going back to the gratitude, I am grateful for them now because they've helped define me and shape me to who I am today. And I'm proud of that. But it's because you have to take those little steps. You have to find that circle. So again, if I'd say anything, it's just improve 1% at a time. Don't like try and look at the mountain and be the best as you can be right now. It's like, no, wherever you're at, accept where you are and improve just a little bit at a time. You improve every day, just that little bit, you're going to be so much better off. And it's just acceptance of where you are. And again, like Sal said, don't compare yourself to others. I think comparison is the thief of joy because we look at other people's lives and we judge our life based on their highlights. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes, and we can't be them. We can only be us. So move forward with what you got.
Oh man, and the highlight reel, like social media is if you are comparing yourself or you're seeing that on social media, that is a highlight reel. That is not anything to do with reality. I appreciate the influencers that kind of show the behind the scenes of like what it actually takes to make a 30-second reel or whatever. I used to try to make 2-minute coach tips, and in order to make a 2-minute tip, it took me all day. I had to script it, I had to film it, I had to edit it. I'm like, this is not, and I'm not getting a return on the investment because I'm giving it away for free. I just wasted a whole day. So for me, I stopped doing it very quickly. It wasn't consistent. I failed, but I also learned, I'm like, hey, there's better ways that I can put my efforts into something else. Also, we had kind of joked a little bit about, wrecking patrol cars, and I've been working on collecting stuff from my dad. My dad passed away 24 years ago now, but my childhood photo album is a little bit different. I don't know if you guys can see this. If you're listening, just bear with me. There's his car down a ditch. There is the tire tracks. This was my photo album. We had tire tracks, childhood photo album, tire tracks of where my dad wrecked a car, blew a stop sign, knocked that over, went off the road again. I have a stack of these pictures. My dad was also old school cop where if you didn't stop, he was going to make you stop. Can't really get away with that too much anymore. But I'm just kind of, if you've wrecked a patrol car, you're okay. It's okay. Have the pictures, keep them, because someday your kids are going to laugh at you and celebrate it. I actually, my dad had wrecked so many patrol cars for his agency, and even though he's been passed away, when we had a meeting with that department, I started by saying, on behalf of my dad, we apologize for how much he cost your department with cars. So, thank you all for being here. For those that are tuning in, you can check us out podcast. What words? Fail again. Take 2 on that. You can check us out on YouTube, Spotify, all the things. And if you want to be part of the conversation, by all means, send us an email to podcast@lawenforcementcoaching.com if you'd like to be part of the conversation. We are doing failure this month, and we move into September is money mindset and all about abundance and shifting how you have a relationship with money, whatever that looks like. So thank you all for being here, and until next week.